Welcome to this training session for those people interested in running in the officer by-elections. We are going to take you through what different roles are up for grabs and what it means to be an officer at the SU and how that works. We're going to look at the elections timetable as well, give you some key tips on how to run a great campaign to hopefully get successfully elected. And we're going to go through some of the rules and regulations for the elections as well that all candidates running to be an officer need to be aware of.
Okay.
So who am I? I am the student representation coordinator, and first of all, my name is Bradley. That would help. My name is Bradley. I'm the student representation coordinator at the SU. So that means my day-to-day job is supporting reps and officers that are elected, helping them run their campaigns and dealing with any issues they might have in their role. Okay. I run things like elections as well. I make sure that elections run smoothly. And I also facilitate our democratic meetings. So things like student council, course rep forum, things like that, which we'll come on to in a little bit. But I help make sure that those are accessible and help facilitate the running of those meetings as well. For elections specifically, I'm also what's known as the deputy returning officer. Basically, that means if you've got any complaints, any questions, anything you're not sure about at all, if you're a candidate or if you're a student that's just voting or interested in the elections, I'm your guy. You come to me with any issues that you've got at all about the elections. And that's what I've just said. Yeah. So this is a recap. If anyone's listening on the recording and they're not sure what role that they want to run for necessarily, here's a list of the positions that we've got running in our officer by-elections. We are also running course rep elections and accommodation rep elections, but there's a separate video for that. If you're watching the recording for this, it's probably the video above the one you're watching now that deals with course reps and accommodation rep elections. But these are the different roles we've got up for grabs. So we've got 7 different officer positions. Some of these were roles that we didn't fill when we ran the main elections in March, and some of them have been created by student council since those elections, so we have to let them now. As you can see, there's quite a wide range of different roles. So our BAME officer is a liberation role, and they represent all students that identify as BAME across all campuses at the SU. The same for students with disabilities officer. They represent all students that identify with having a disability across all campuses at the University of Suffolk. Business school officer represents students in the business school and works very closely with the course reps in the business school to deal with academic issues. Yeah. Then we've got two of our campus officer roles, East Coast and LSC. They will represent students at those campuses, work with whichever rep networks are in place there. With the support of the SU, look at running any campaigns or events that they want to run on those campuses, and helping action any issues that come through from students. We've got a part-time students officer role as well. So for any student that's studying part-time, you would represent them. And East School officer as well. So that's engineering, arts, science, and technology. So you'd be representing students in that course, in that school. Loads up for grabs. In summary, basically, what all officers have in common is that they'll run campaigns and events with the support of the SU. So we'll have budget so there'll be pot of money that you can put in to run those events. And obviously, as a staff team, we'll support you with running those events and those campaigns. The absolute core, I suppose, of any rep role is actioning student feedback. So you might get, if you're a school officer, you might get course reps coming to you with issues, and it's your role to help support them. If you're a campus officer, you might just have any student that's a UOS student on your campus might come to you with issues about facilities, about teaching, about anything really. And part of your role as an officer is to try and get that feedback to the right place and help that student and support them with that feedback. And again, as an SU team, we're here to support you with that. If you're ever not sure who you need to go to or what you need to do about an issue, we're here to guide you and support you with that. And you also, any officer gets to sit on our student officer committee and our student council. So student officer, I'll do student council first. So student council is basically where we make our decisions as an SU. So all elected reps, course reps, accommodation reps, and all of our officers as well. So all the campus officers, liberation, school officers, and our 2 full-time presidents as well. All of them get to sit on council. Any of them can bring forward an idea to improve the student experience, and everyone there will get a chance to discuss and then vote on that idea. And if it's passed, then it becomes students' union policy, which means as a union, our officers will support that, and in meetings with the university, they'll promote that. And as a staff team, we'll then have a mandate to support that motion and to help officers make it reality. So that's Student Council. You'll also get reports from the 2 full-time presidents at that about all the work they've been doing over the last month. And that's a chance for officers and reps to ask questions to the presidents and make suggestions to them about things they should be doing. Student Officer Committee is where the part-time and the full-time officers meet. It usually is the week after council. And if you're an officer, whether a part-time or a full-time, you're part of what is known as the executive of the Students' Union. So really, you're one of the leaders of the SU and of the student body. And part of your role, part of Student Officer Committee is all the officers updating each other on what they're up to and seeing where they can help each other and where they can support each other. So, for instance, if you were a campus officer and you'd had a student come to you that had a disability and they were having access issues on campus around that, then it might be a good thing to talk to the Students with Disabilities officer as well. And Student Officer Committee is where you could maybe talk to each other about common issues that you can work together on, and the presidents could maybe look at helping you as well with that. The second role of Student Officer Committee is to action anything that comes through Student Council. So there'll be various motions that will ask the SU to do things or campaign for certain things. The role of Student Officer Committee is to decide how exactly are we going to do this. So the presidents will usually come to Student Officer Committee with a suggestion. We think we should go to this university committee or this member of staff at the university and ask them for this. And then Student Officer Committee basically approves that plan and can make any suggestions. You might think, oh, you might also want to try speaking to this person. So if you're a campus officer, for instance, you might say, there's someone else at our campus that deals with that issue separately to people at Ipswich. So you might also want to talk to this person on our campus as well. It might be for a school officer. The students in that school might be particularly affected by a certain facilities issue. So that's where that school officer could make the presidents aware of that and factor that in. So those are the key sort of areas that any officer does in their role. I will mention quickly Suffolk Plus as well. So this is a new employability scheme that we launched last year as an SU. Basically, it's an employability award that tries to recognise and reward the volunteering hours that students put in their volunteering roles. So any role within the SU, whether it's officer, rep, student society, any role that you're in an SU role can go towards your hours for Suffolk Plus. Basically, there's 3 components. We ask you to log volunteering hours. And if you need 10 volunteering hours to get to bronze, 25 for silver, 50 for gold. We ask you to do a bit of time per award level on Future Me, which is the university's employability skills hub. And then we also ask you to reflect a little bit on the skills you've developed throughout that. If you do all of that and you do enough to reach either bronze, silver or gold, you will get various rewards depending on what level you're at from the SU. And it will also appear on your HERE award on your transcript from the university as well. So that's anything that any volunteer role gets entered into Suffolk Plus if you'd like to be. Okay. Reminder that this is this URL to nominate yourself for any officer roles. If you're watching this and you haven't yet nominated yourself, this is the link you need to go to. It takes a couple of minutes to nominate yourself. We'll go through some of that stuff in a little bit more detail in a minute. But essentially, the system probably, you'll have to log into the SU website. So the system will probably already have some of your details like name and email anyway. So all you'll really need to add is a photo. I think it's just a photo and a manifesto. So the manifesto is the thing that people are like, oh, what does that mean? What do I put in that? It can be as simple as a little bit about who you are, maybe what you study, why you're here, and why you think you'd be a good officer. What that's your chance to convince people. So why, if I'm a student, if I'm a voter reading that manifesto, why should I vote for you over anyone else? And that's your chance to get that message across to students. So tell them a little bit about you and why you've got some good qualities to be an officer. And if you've got any plans for issues that you might want to tackle or things you want to do, that's a great place to let them know as well. There is a 500-word max limit. It doesn't have to be that long, but you can't go over that. So think carefully. I think the manifesto is a really good place to start when you're looking at doing your campaign to be an officer, or even when you're trying to decide if you want to be an officer. I think it's a great place to start, to just sit down and plot out, you know, why do I want to be an officer? What would I do in that role? What is the message that I want to get across to potential voters? So I think a manifesto is a good place to start in any campaign, because then you can make sure that those key points, that you get that across in any posters or leaflets or shout outs or social media posts that you do as part of your campaign. You know what your message is from the start if you've sat there and done that manifesto.
Okay.
Here's the timeline as a reminder for what's coming up. I'm just going to drink as well because I've been talking a lot.
No problem.
So October 8th is the deadline for all officer nominations, 11:59 p.m. So that's the deadline to nominate yourself on the website for the role. And it's also the deadline to submit your manifesto and any promo materials. So you'll be able to nominate yourself without a manifesto, but to actually stand and to be approved to stand, you will need to upload a manifesto. Even if it's just a couple of lines, you still need something in that manifesto, so you know students are informed on what they're voting for. So October 8th is also the deadline for that. So please make sure, if you're watching this and you've already nominated but you've not done a manifesto, go back into that nominations portal and add a manifesto when you get a chance to do so. We do also ask for promo materials. If you want to put up a poster around campus about the fact that you're running for a certain role, that's fantastic. But just drop us an email with the design of it, just so that we can okay it. I'll go through reasons why we might say no to a poster in a minute, but they're pretty obvious, you know, like as long as you're not being like rude or discriminatory or whatever to people, then it's fine. But we just need to see a design just to okay it. So do drop us an email by that date with any posters that you want to use or anything like that. Voting will then open on the Monday, October the 11th at 9 a.m. It will run for that calendar week up until the working week up until the end of the Friday. At 5 p.m. voting will close on the Friday. In the middle of that week, we are going to run a candidate question time. So that's a chance for basically for you to give a little pitch to students about why they should vote for you. And it's a chance for students to ask candidates any questions they have. So, you know, they might be finding it really hard to decide between two candidates for a role. That's a good chance for them to ask them both the same questions and decide based on those answers. We'll be doing this in a hybrid way. So we'll be running it in the SU social space on the Ipswich campus. But you can also have the option to join via Zoom if that suits you. But I'll come on to candidate question time a little bit more in a minute. And then we will be announcing the results of who's won on the Monday, October the 8th as well. So it will probably take us a few days to announce all the course rep election results, but for officer elections, there's only a small number of roles. So we'll announce those straight away on the Monday. Yeah, so the question time is at 1 p.m. on the Wednesday the 13th. As I said, we'll run it in the SU social space, but we'll live stream it on Facebook and also give people an opportunity to join by Zoom if they can't make it in person to the event or need to isolate or anything like that. You'll be able to join via Zoom. If you can't make it at all, that's fine, but just let us know. We would really advise people to attend if they can. It's a really good chance to get that message out there to students. But if you can't attend, what we'll do is take questions. If there are any questions for you or for everyone running for your role, we'll make a note of those questions, pop them in an email to you and ask for you to get back to us in 24 hours and we can post your replies on the website. So yeah, if you can't make this date, just let me know so we can get that set up. And key contacts for the elections, as I said, I'm the Deputy Returning Officer, so any questions, complaints, problems at all, drop me an email. That's my email address there, su.democracy. We do also have what is known as a returning officer, which is the National Union of Students. They act as returning officer for our elections. What that means is essentially if you disagree with anything that I've said, if you've come to me with a complaint and I've made a decision on that complaint and you don't agree with that, then you do have the right as a student or a candidate to appeal that decision and ask. Basically, it's like asking for someone else to take a look at that decision and decide what they think. You can do that. That's not a problem. Just let me know. And there is a form to fill out for NUS, and we can send that to NUS, and they'll have a look to see to have a second look at the decision I've made. So I'm just going to give you a few tips on running a good campaign if you decided you want to run to be an officer. If this first bit of the presentation hasn't scared anyone off, You can have a few tips here on how to run a good campaign. I would say front and center is be clear. So when this goes for when you're writing your manifesto, to if you're having a chat with students, out and about during voting week, be really clear with people. What is it you're trying to achieve? And if you've got say I want I don't know, I want a popular policy at the moment is vending machines. So if you want a new vending machine in your corridor, be really clear with students. What sort of vending machine are you talking about? Who might you talk to try and make that happen? You don't have to have an exact perfect plan for everything, but if you have ideas about how you might achieve a certain campaign point, then let students know about that and be clear about that. Talk to students about why you think you're the right person for the role. So what is it about you that would make you a good officer? Are you good at interacting with people? Have you got some leadership skills? Have you got any previous experience that's relevant to the role? Let students know, let voters know about all of that stuff. And I think really sit and think about what is the one, if you have a conversation with a student in a corridor during voting week, or if you do a lecture, if you go into a lecture and talk to students, what's the one thing you want them to leave that interaction with, the one message you want them to have remembered at the end of that interaction about you? So it could be that there's one thing you want to do as an officer that you think is really popular, that's going to be really popular with students. Make sure you get that into every conversation you have. Or maybe it's one thing about you and your experience or your attributes that you would bring to the role. Make sure that's in every conversation that you have with students. So it's really worth thinking before the campaign, before voting week starts. Sit and think, what is my message to students? I do quite like rule of three, actually. It's quite nice to be able to rattle off 3 things that you want everyone to know. But as a minimum, think about what's the core message that you want to get out to students. Be organised as well. So don't leave everything to the day before voting week to set everything up. Have a think about if there's any course mates or friends you've got on campus that might help you in running a campaign. That might be really simple stuff. So you can have like a tier of commitment. So it could be that you've got quite a wide group of people that are happy to share some posts for you on Facebook or go and put some posters up near their classroom. You might have and then a smaller group of people that are willing to do lecture shout outs for you, or to help you design a poster, or go out with you and leaflet students, so that there's a range of different activities you can offer to people, but have a think about people that would be willing to do those things. Have a think about where you want your promotional material. So posters are great to get the word out to students. Have a think, where are the busy places? Where are students going to actually see those posters? There's no point in putting a load of posters in a corridor that 5 people are going to walk down throughout the day. You want to be putting posters up in really obvious places where people are going to see. When you've identified those places, do double check with staff that run those areas that it's okay for you to put up a poster. Don't just put posters up anywhere. Do double check with any staff that are in that area if it's okay to put a poster there. But absolutely plan where you want those posters to go. And leaflet as well. So a really effective way is to maybe set up a stall in a busy area and chat to students as they're passing, and have some leaflets with you as well. Have a think about where and when you might want to do that. So if you're going to do a certain area of campus, when are the busy times on that campus to maximise how much your time there. As I said, have a core message. I like rule of 3, so have maybe 3 policies or 3 things about you or whatever it is. Have 3 things that you want to get across to students, and make sure those are on your leaflet. Make sure that you've got mention of those on your social media posts. Make sure you try and get those across as often as you can in conversations with students. And if you're going to use any social media to get the message out, have those set up and ready to go. Ignore that date. That date is wrong on that slide. The date is October 11th. So what we're saying is you can set up social media pages. You can even schedule posts to go out ahead of the campaign, ahead of voting week, but please don't publish anything until voting week. So we ask candidates not to campaign before 9 a.m. October 11th when voting opens. So no campaigning before then. So you are allowed to tell some people you're running for the purposes of getting a campaign team together. So, you can tell some close friends, I'm thinking of running for this role. Would you be happy to support me? You can do some of that before voting week, but like, don't be ridiculous about it. We're talking like a handful of people to get together for your campaign team, but don't be tallying dozens of people before voting week, because that we would just class that as campaigning at that point. So you can tell a small number of people for the purposes of getting a campaign team together.
Okay.
Creative, have some fun with it. I've ran in elections before, both successfully and unsuccessfully, and that you can have a lot of fun. It can be a great time, even if you don't win. It's a chance to go out and speak to students about things you're passionate about things you want to change. It's starting a conversation on your campus about how things are on campus, how students are getting on. So have fun with it, enjoy it. Don't let it stress you out too much, and have a good time speaking to people. Do things a little bit differently. You're going to need to grab people's attention. Not everyone you speak to will be interested in elections. Are there ways you can do creative things to reach those people, to make them listen to you for a few minutes? Some people you speak to might want to vote for someone else. Are there creative things you can do to try and convince them to vote for you instead?
Yeah.
I've said things that aren't lecturing and leafleting and lecture shout outs. Those I think you should definitely do, but chances are other candidates will also be doing those as well. So are there other things you can do that are a bit different to other candidates? So think about that. Think about groups that don't often vote as well. So this could be sometimes on campuses that aren't Ipswich, we see students vote less than Ipswich students. So are there ways you can reach those students on those campuses and engage them in elections? I don't know off the top of my head, but there's perhaps distance learners or part-time students, because they're on campus less physically. Maybe they won't are less likely to vote. I don't actually know the figures, but there's a chance that those sort of students might not vote as often as others. So are there ways you can try and reach those students? Because if a student isn't on campus very much, or if they're not based at Ipswich, you can do all the campaigning you want on Ipswich, or posters, or leaflets, and shout outs. But if students aren't going to that campus, they're not going to see any of that. So are there other ways you can reach those students? That's worth thinking about as well. If you're running for a part-time officer role, we will give you £35 to run as a part-time officer. So you can spend, this is both a spending limit, so you can't spend more than this on your campaign, but it is also what we will give you back. So if you spent this £35 on elections, we will give you that back as an SU. So we will also, on top of that, cover some printing. So I need to double check exactly what the amounts of printing are, but we'll be fairly generous with what we will help cover printing costs are for students. So that's on top of the £35 budget. So you don't need to factor in any printing for posters and leaflets into that £35 budget, unless you want to print more than what we've allocated for the printing. But we'll be fairly generous with what we offer for printing and flyers. I need to double check the figures, but I'll send that out in an email to candidates closer to the time. So you might want additional flyers or posters, but we'll probably have you covered with that. Other things you might want to spend that money on, maybe you want to get some banners. You could try and get a professional banner, or you could go old school and use a bed sheet. And if you're artistic, or you've got friends that are quite artistic, they could write or draw a nice banner on a bed sheet. That's a staple of student elections, so do give that a go. It might be, again, with t-shirts. You might buy some cheap t-shirts and draw your own design on them as a cheap way to do it, or you might want to try and get a couple printers. That's up to you. Stickers or badges is always a good idea. So I voted for such and such. That could be a sticker that you try and encourage people to wear if they voted for you, to get the message out there again. Social media promotion as well. So you might want to do some paid posts on social media to promote your role. So you could spend £5-10 to really boost a post to get that out there. I think that can be useful, but just consider who it is you're trying to reach with that, and whether whichever platform you're using is going to be able to target those people accurately enough for it to be worth you spending that money. That's just something to think about. But candidates have certainly used social media promotion in the past. Just a reminder that voting is in ranked order. So what this means is when students log in to vote in voting week, they won't just be choosing, I want this person, I want candidate A, and that's it. What they'll be doing is ranking all the candidates in order of their preference. So let's say I really like candidate A, they're my top choice. I definitely want them to get it. Candidate B, I'm not as convinced by them, but I think they probably do an okay job. And candidate C, no way, I think they're awful. What I would do if that was how I wanted to vote is I would then put a number 1 next to candidate A, put a number 2 next to candidate B, and then because I think candidate C is awful, I might not put any number next to them. So you don't have to preference everyone. So you don't have to put a number next to everyone. It's only the people you actually want in. So I can live with candidate B being the officer, so I'll give them a second place preference. Candidate C, no, they're rubbish, so I'm not going to give them anything. So that's how students will vote on the day. So that's important for you as a candidate to remember, because if you're having a conversation with someone and they're saying, oh, sorry, my friend's running for that role as well. I've already voted, I've already pledged my vote to them. Then what you could, if you're not going to be able to convince them to vote for you as number 1, what you could always say to them is, okay, that's fine. Could you consider putting me as your second place preference, please? And then people win off that, So when the vote is counted, what we do is we look at all the first place preferences for all candidates. If no one has reached the quota, so there'll be a set quota they have to reach to be elected. If no one has met that yet, we will eliminate the person with the least first place preferences, and then all of their second place preferences will be distributed amongst the other candidates. So you could when the first round of voting is in, you could not have the most first place preferences, but you might still end up winning because you've got more second or third or fourth place preferences from other candidates that have been eliminated. So it is important to get those second and third place preferences. They will help if you're still in the running when it comes to the second and the third round of the count as well. So yeah, take home message is, it's not the end of the world if someone won't put you as number 1, because you can always ask them to put you as number 2 or even number 3, and that will still help. But I won't keep you as much longer. I'm just going to go really quickly through some of the rules and regs. What I will say about a lot of this is that it's common sense, a lot of this stuff. Basically what we want is all candidates focusing on their own campaigns, them running really positive campaigns about what they want to change, what they want to do. If you follow that logic, then you probably won't go far wrong, and you probably won't fall foul of any of these rules. But we'll go through some of them really quickly, because candidates need to know them before they run. So in general, the Students' Union has an equality and diversity policy that candidates have to be in line with. Basically, don't be discriminatory in your campaigns. We don't want to see racist things or sexist things, anything like that. Just don't put anything out that could be discriminatory towards various groups. If you are campaigning somewhere and a member of university staff asks you to stop or to do something differently, we ask at first that you respect that. So it might be that you ask to do a lecture shout out and they say no, or it might be that you're putting up posters somewhere and they ask you to take them down. What we would ask is that in the first instance, if you respect that request and do as directed by the staff members, if you feel like what they've asked you to do is really unfair, then you can come to me afterwards and I can have a conversation with that staff member. What we don't want is candidates getting into heated arguments with academic staff or professional service staff. So yeah, just respect their request and then come to me if you think it's not fair, and I can have a chat with that staff member and see if we can get something resolved. All of this stuff that I will go through will apply to anyone that's part of your campaign team as well, or anyone that is supporting you in the elections. So if they are supporting you as the candidate, you've got a bit of a responsibility to make sure that they are following these rules as well, and to make sure that they're not breaching these rules as well. And if you would like a copy of these slides, I can send them to you so you can share them with your campaign teams. Materials. So this is what I was saying earlier about posters. We just need to approve posters, and not just posters, but flyers, social media promo. I don't need to see every individual social media post. We'll go on to that in a minute. But mainly posters and flyers. If you are putting any of these out, we do need to have a quick look at them. basically to make sure there's nothing on there that is unfair, nothing that's obviously not true. Like if you said something like, "Oh, the university's got £1 billion in reserves, let's spend all of that on X policy," that's obviously not true. Well, I'm pretty sure it's not true. I don't know, actually. Maybe it is. I don't know how much money the university's got on reserves, but I'm assuming they don't have £1 billion. So something like that that's obviously incorrect, we would ask you to remove or change. Don't sort of be really mean about or refer negatively to staff members or other students. We would ask you to take that sort of thing off. And obviously anything that's sort of discriminatory towards various groups of society, we wouldn't let you have anything like that on a poster or leaflet. Anything that could be prejudicial to the fair running of elections, I'm trying to think of an example of what that would even be. I don't think we've ever come across something like that in a leaflet. I don't know, I suppose maybe if you said something about the elections that wasn't factually correct or something on the flyers, we would ask you to change that as well. So it's all pretty common sense stuff. Don't be rude about anyone, and don't lie on your posters and leaflets, basically is the bottom line. For social media, I'm obviously not going to ask to approve every individual post, because that would be ridiculous, and I would do nothing else during voting week if that was true. What we ask instead, I'm not even going to ask for this actually. I don't necessarily need to be an admin. All I need to do is have a link to any social media you might use. So if you set up a Facebook page for your campaign, that's great. Just drop me an email with the link on it. And that's just so if we do have any complaints or there are any issues, I've got that link to hand so I can quickly check it for myself. If you could drop that to me before the end of nominations as well, that'd be great. Only move or alter your own campaign stuff. Don't, if there's no space for your poster on a notice board, you can't just take someone else's poster down and put yours up instead. That's not fair game. So only be moving or interacting with your own campaign stuff. You can't campaign in the library or the student union offices. There's only SU staff in the offices anyway, so you wouldn't find many students to lobby at that point. But yeah, no campaigning in the library or the student union offices. What we do ask as well is if a student is voting, then and there on, in front of you on their phone, or maybe you've taken an iPad out or something. Maybe not in COVID, or if you are, maybe wipe it after people have used it. But what we ask is that once someone has logged into the website and started to vote, leave them to it. Take a few steps back. Don't try and. But I've heard stories of other SUs where people have started clicking on things for them and or talking to them and try and influence them whilst they're voting. Once someone has started to vote, they should just be left alone, and that's their chance to do what they want. So don't try and interfere with someone once they've begun the process of voting. And just be sensible about where you campaign. So don't block a fire exit, when you're campaigning and things like that. Just be sensible about it. Be aware of the health and safety, basic principles of health and safety when you're campaigning. Don't create any fire hazards. Don't do it on a stairway where someone might trip and fall or anything like that. Just be sensible about where you campaign. I've already talked about budgets, because it's actually larger this year. Like I said, it's £35 budget for candidates. Just a note, it is £35 part-time officer roles. It was £25 last year, but we've increased it to £35 now. Like I said, this is what we will reimburse for you, but it is also a spending limit, so you can't spend more than that. So you can't. That's basically to stop someone that might have more wealth than someone else being able to win just because they could spend loads of money on stuff. So anything you are purchasing towards your campaign has to fall within that £35 budget. You can't spend more than that on campaign materials. If you want to be reimbursed for that stuff, we can get stuff. We can buy stuff up front for you if you send us the link in the info. That's fine. Otherwise, just keep all your receipts and hand these in by the end of voting week to let me know, and we can get that processed and reimbursed for you. The full list of all the rules and regs in bylaw 1, and also on that other URL at the bottom of that slide. It might be that people ask me some questions. Candidates might come to me with some questions about something, and it might be that I have to make a decision about something that we don't currently have any rules on. if I do that during the course of this campaign, I will add it to that URL at the bottom, and I'll also let candidates know that that's been done. There are already some stuff in there from the March elections that were new, so do have a look at that URL. It's stuff about like posting in social media groups, posting on online learning environments. So do have a quick flick through those as well. It's all pretty common sense, I think, so don't overthink it. Final thing, if you spot, whether you are as a voter or as another candidate, if you spot anything you think a candidate is doing that you're not happy with, you think maybe it breaks some of those rules we've just talked about, then come to me, basically, is the thing to do. If it's something that's fairly minor, I will often try and deal with the issue informally. So it might be that someone has put a poster somewhere they're not supposed to have it. If that's the only thing they've done, I would just go to them and say, can we get that poster removed? Give them a bit of a warning and say, make sure you're following the guidance that's in place, that sort of thing. If someone is continually doing something like that, then we might look at putting in some sanctions, which we'll come on to in a minute. Or if it's something more serious than that, then we might put in a sanction. I work with a group of elected students who are the Democratic Procedures Committee. They do various things with our governance and our student council throughout the year, but during elections, they act as our elections committee as well. So if I get a complaint that can't be resolved informally, then I will go to them. If it's a little bit more serious, or if it's a repeat offender, then I will go to this elections committee, and we will have a discussion about what we think is appropriate to do, and I will then act as directed by the elections committee. As I said, if you do want to report anything, you can a complaint, su.democracy, an email, and we'll get on it. And I'm sure no one is going to do this, but I do have to say it, if you make stuff up about another candidate just to make them look bad, then we will treat that as a breach of the election rules in itself, and you might end up getting a sanction as a result. I'm sure we're not going to have any complaints at all, because everyone is going to follow the rules perfectly. Just as a note about what could happen as a result of a complaint, the simplest thing is if someone. So what we've had sometimes is if someone has posted something on social media before they're allowed to start campaigning, if it's just one post and it's only been up a few minutes before we spot it, then we would just ask them to get rid of it. Or like if it's a poster somewhere where it's not supposed to be and it's not been there very long, we just ask them to remove it. That's the simplest thing we can do as a sanction. Okay. If it's something a little bit more serious or something that's happened multiple times, we could look at potentially banning them from campaigning for a certain period of time. So, let's say someone put up a social media post when they weren't supposed to, but it was up for 6 hours. We would maybe consider saying, okay, you now have to wait 6 hours again before you can campaign. That sort of thing. And it might not necessarily be perfectly in line with how long the post has been up with. I don't know, maybe they've done something else they weren't supposed to do, campaigned in an area they're not supposed to. We could put a set number of hours ban for that, potentially. Most serious thing is we could actually withdraw someone from the election. If it would have to be quite serious for that. Someone's got to. I'm trying to think of why we would do that. Like, I don't know, like if someone was putting out loads of like really sexist social media posts that were really discriminatory towards us, or something that was really horrible and discriminatory towards a certain group. That's probably a time when I would be saying, right, you're probably not allowed to stand anymore. We've not had to do that, and I hope we don't have to do that. But just so candidates are aware, if you continue to break the rules or you break the rules in a very serious way, that is a possibility. That's it. I'm going to stop the recording there. So if anyone watching the recording has any questions, drop me an email on su.democracy. Thank you.
Thank you.